I turn to Susie
And I go, well, I got a complaint to register now. If we extend class till 9:30, then we don't get snacks for an extra half hour. Boy, I don't even know where to begin. Let me do this. A couple of things. I'm trying to think how to even start. Let me work with something from the moderation. And it pertains to salvation, so I guess that's goes along with the topic. I don't have a whole list of things and stuff on the soul, but what I want to work with is the part of the moderation that talks about the purpose, pattern, or plan of salvation. And the reason that I want to do this is because several years ago I ran into a situation where someone had challenged that I knew the pattern and the plan, but I didn't know the purpose. And I thought to myself, well, how can that be? You know? And I went back to the textbook, and I looked at how it's described in the textbook. And it's described as the purpose, pattern, or plan.
Right.
It's not the purpose,
Right.
pattern, and plan.
Right. That's right.
And these things kind of like roll off our lips, and I know that we think or maybe when we say and, but there are some people who don't think or when they say and. Consequently, if you describe the tabernacle pattern, it's not enough. If you describe the plan, it's not enough. You still don't know the purpose. Okay? But Yahweh really is trying to show a unity here. And so let me just kick us off with that. Because the beauty of it is if you know the tabernacle pattern, you don't have a problem with what Yahweh's purpose is. Because Yahweh wants us to know what His purpose, His plan, or His pattern is. And Yahweh always does this. Go to Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. I'll point this out here, but what I want you to do is think about this when you're reading things that Yahweh always wants to make a real specific point about. And this is what He does.
That's Isaiah 46 and 9. Remember the former things of old, for I am Elohim and there is none else. I am Yahweh and there is none like me.
Now, when Yahweh wants to make a point, He repeats Himself. And I mean, it sounds like, if you reread this again, it sounds like He really doesn't need to make the second statement. Read that again.
Remember the former
I heard the
things.
voice coming from over there, and go ahead.
Remember the former things of old, for I am Yahweh and there is none else.
Now, I am Yahweh and there is none else. Pretty clear. Right? You don't really need to expand on that at all. Right? Read.
I am Yahweh and there is none like me.
He thinks that He needs to let you know that when He says there is none else, that means there's none like me, because it's not sufficient for you to say, well, none else, because you're going to come up with someone like Him. In other words, the points that Yahweh makes, as simple as we think they are, He emphasized them in a couple of different ways, because this is the point. And He wants you to understand that there is no other Elohim beside Him. Now, why is that so significant? You know, when you look out in the world, you have all these different gods, and we call them mythological gods. And so we generally don't have a problem with them because they're man-made gods. But when you come down to the mystery of iniquity, see, the mystery of iniquity becomes separate from Yahweh, co-eternal with Yahweh, and in a sense, another God that Yahweh is opposing. Because this is the only way that people can reconcile the presence of a mystery of iniquity and have a creator who is all righteous. They got to make him separate from different stuff, different person. And Yahweh, when Yahweh says this, there is no other God beside me. He's not saying there is no other good God beside me, and there's a bad one. See, go to the chapter just before that, the 45th chapter, and I'm not sure. Is that I create light darkness? Read a couple of them here.
That's Isaiah 45 and 5.
There you go.
I am Yahweh, and there is none else. There is no Elohim beside me.
This is an important point, that it is He and He alone. And it's going to become important when you want to understand anything about the soul. Yes, sir. Because you have to understand where it came from, what stuff it is, and where it's going to go to. And if you can't, what you're going to see is that you can't have a mystery of iniquity that's separate from or steps out of and away from Yahweh. And the world is going to struggle with this particular concept because they can't bring those two, just like they can't bring science and the Bible together. They can't bring the mystery of righteousness and the mystery of iniquity together under one creator. Read.
I girded thee, though thou hast not known me, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west
Now,
that there...
Yahweh goes, there is none else me, and I girded you, though you didn't know me. And if you go back to the scriptures, before the burning bush, Yahweh, Elohim, or Yahweh was known as El Shaddai, or the Almighty Provider. And what he did was, and we've gone into this so many times, is that he provided most of the stuff for these people. He provided everything. And the example that I think is so cool is that even the wealth that Egypt had, that, you know, they had to buy, came from Yahweh. Yahweh provided stuff for the sheep for Abraham, and he provided everything. And they don't know it. Isn't that what you read? I clothed you, and you didn't know it. Now, here we are in year 2001, clothed in these bodies, and Yahweh clothed us. Talking about the world now, because we should know this. But the world does not know where they got their clothes from. And I mean the flesh, I don't mean the threads, see? I mean that they don't know the origin of their own physical bodies. Let alone having the thought that they know where their soul comes from. So he's telling them back there that they didn't know. And before I came into this class, I did not know. I'll say this, I was taught that we were made in the likeness and image of our Creator. And I was taught the Genesis story where God created, was taught that. But I didn't know where the stuff came from. And the world doesn't know where the stuff comes from, because even in Roman Catholicism, they say that it was spontaneous generation, that this creation, the physical creation, was created from nothing. It's Roman Catholic doctrine. Now, the significance of that being Roman Catholic doctrine is this, is that Protestantism came out of Roman Catholicism. And Protestantism, when they came out of Roman Catholicism, didn't say, well, we just disagree with everything that the Roman Catholics say.
Luther just plain didn't like Mary being so important, and the Pope being infallible. Or, I mean, there were just a couple of things. Maybe what, 10 things. All right, so that was 10. But what you were made of wasn't one of the things that came to Martin Luther's mind about a disagreement with the Roman Catholic Church. And if you ask people where you came from, I'm talking about what the source and substance of the actual stuff is concerned, they really don't know. And they don't know because they haven't been shown any witnesses or proof. They've only been said, well, it may come from this or may have come from that. No one's been given any witnesses or proof. See? Now what we say here is that Yahweh Elohim, when Yahweh took on shape and form as Yahweh Elohim, and he spoke in the creation, that the stuff that he used to materialize that he conceived of as a purpose was his spirit. And so we say that it's spirit materialized. Right. Now, there is a simple witness in the creation for that. And that is just the way physics works. Matter can't be created or destroyed. And the most popular equation that you flunked out of high school and you know E equals mc squared. And we're talking, this was a revelation to Einstein at the turn of the century. See, turn of the last century. But my point is, everybody knows that. Why would Yahweh make that equation known by everybody? See? Because it is a witness. Because what that says is that the invisible or light energy can become matter. And matter can go back to the invisible light energy. And what it also says is that you can't create or destroy matter. In other words, in principle, it's eternal. So the stuff that you have, in principle, manifests an eternal substance that came from something that was originally invisible and without any particular shape and form. Now that's Albert Einstein. See? And so when we talk about having a witness for a theological concept, and I use that word very specifically, concept. Because if you don't have a witness, you have a concept. In this school or out of this school. That's right. So once you get a witness, then it's something that you know. I had this experience, we'll get to the scripture, I had this experience this week. I'm unemployed, as many people know, and in the process of looking for a job, and was up at the university talking to some doctors that I have known for years, 15 or 20 years actually. We got into a discussion about the world events. And this one doctor said to me that we really can't have any resolution unless we have a president who is a Christian, that it's a Christian president. Right. Oh, it was painful. Because the problem that we have is you have religious concepts fighting religious concepts, and it's just, you know, you just can't do that. So anyways, well, this guy is like a major born-again Christian. Now, I know this guy for 15 years and never knew this, all right? Of course, he's known me for 15 years and never knew that I knew something about the Bible. So we started talking about the difference between manifestation and principle, because that's the only thing that I know, is that there's a difference between principle and manifestation. That was the thing that, when I sat down in this class, was a revelation to me. That these manifestations have underlying principles. I never knew that. And that is what has allowed me to see all the way down through what Yahweh has shown me. And it's only because it's the way he does it, Romans 1:19-20. It's not like I did anything. It's just he told me what he did, and I thought, wow. He showed me how it worked. Yeah. So anyway, so I told him, I said that really what you need are universal principles governing
And I tried to get him away from the Christianity kind of thing. So he got me in the hall and he said,
Well, I have some problems with some of the things that you were saying.
first of all, you have to deal with where you came from, the origin of man, and you have to deal with who Jesus was he really the Son of God? And you have to deal with whether or not you're saved. This is what he hit me when I'm thinking, well, Bob, I can deal with all three of those things. So anyway, but what I did was, I told him about how Yahweh had created the creation. And that Yahshua was Yahweh, manifested in that flesh to fulfill a covenant not to institute it, and not to set up the Christian way of life that you think, and on and on and on. But the thing that I recognized is that they don't know anything. He says, well, you got to know where man came from. His idea is that God created you. And that's way down the line. Because from in front of that, it's he created you from what? And no one is going to call this spirit materialized, eternal substance in a physical form. And we have had that. See, this is when Dr. Kinley had his vision in Revelation, Yahweh revealed to him these things. They weren't common knowledge before then. He didn't synthesize this from the works of times gone. This was all he did once he had the revelation, was that the revelation allows you to look at the witnesses in the creation and know what they mean, and so you provide witnesses for spiritual principles, and it looks like you just learned all that. No, these manifestations have always been stating these principles. The revelation is that they do that there is a Yahweh, and that they do that way. Now, read where you are here again, because that's all from I clothed you, though you didn't know it, and I'm thinking that the clothing is here with the flesh. Back here, he clothed them with sheepskins and provided garments for them, but the point is, he's clothed us with the very, we call them vessels, as though they're just disposable. As soon as you use the term vessel, it's like, well, it's a throwaway. But these bodies aren't throwaways in that sense. They're not vessels in the sense that you just discard. There's no discard. There's no thank you. There's no landfill. We got the charades here. There's no big landfill where these things are discarded and you go on. This is divine stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that you're all righteous and holy. I'm just telling you, this is the only place this stuff came from, the chair too. Everything. Now, read here.
I girded thee, though thou hast not known me, that they might know from the rising of the sun and from the west, that there is none beside me.
Now, he did all this so they would know that there's none beside him, which he said 2 verses up, there's none like me, none that look like me, hello, there's none beside me. In these 2 chapters, he said this, that's the 3rd, 4th time. Okay, now read.
I am Yahweh, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness.
Now, it's important to know he's the only one, because now he says, now I form the light and create darkness. Go ahead.
I make peace and create evil.
Now, I make peace, I read this one time to the Moonies, and create evil. And they said, it must be a mistranslation someplace. Because it does not go along with the normal concept of God that he creates evil. He created the devil, and the devil turned bad. He had nothing to do with that. But Yahweh did create evil. But that doesn't make Yahweh evil. Because of the purpose, the pattern, or the plan. He created that because. not going to spend a lot of time up here, but one of the things that we learned down through the years in this class was that Yahweh Elohim's name was Yahshua. And
We didn't know that the first time we came into class. It wasn't the kind of thing where everything that we know now was taught 30 years ago. You know, there were things that were brought out down through the years.
those things that were brought out always fit with those things that had originally been revealed.
That's right.
However, we've never had anything brought out that has contradicted something that we were taught in the beginning.
Now, there is a doctrine that does that. And they say, well, we were wrong about eating meat on Friday. It's okay now. Limbo,
Until 1960, maybe, I don't know when limbo was. 61? Limbo was out in 61. You were lucky if you, in 61, if you died on the other side of limbo being out, you were a little baby, because then you probably got to go to heaven. But if you died on that the week before, you'd be in limbo. And people have no problem with that. There's no one looks back. I'm talking about Roman Catholics. My mother's Roman Catholic, Sicilian Roman Catholic, so we're not talking,
your everyday Roman Catholic.
She doesn't think that there's any big deal that these things change. It's just evolved. And we were wrong back then. We learned that's not the way Yahweh's purpose works. Yahweh,
His purpose is always in agreement. It always builds. It's like, then they talk about a foundation stone, and I built a house on a foundation stone, and when you're building a house on a foundation stone, when you get up to the second floor, you don't jack the first floor out. The second floor fits on the first floor. So anyways, we learned that Yahweh Elohim's name was Yahshua. Now, when Yahweh Elohim transfigured into this threefold intangible tabernacle pattern, and this tabernacle pattern was constructed in the wilderness of Sinai, this pattern and this body, this pattern and this body go together. See? And that's
really why this pattern and this body go together. Because this body was made in the likeness and image, and this pattern reflects this body. This body is just a second witness to this pattern. Now, this pattern, and last time I was in Lansing we did this, but we're doing the soul, so I'm just going to do it again. This pattern,
given under this old covenant,
had a purpose. There was a reason behind why this pattern was given. This pattern was given because the law that was given to Israel, Yahweh knew something about that law before he gave it to Israel. Yes, sir. And what he knew was that there was not a heart in them, that Israel could not keep this law. And this law was a law, it's called in your book, a law of sin and death. Now, why is it called the law of sin and death? Because if you sinned, they killed you. And as I said before, and just to give you the image, the way that they killed you was to take very large stones and break them over your head. Now watch. You have a physical law that you physically break, and they take physical rocks and crush your physical skull. See? You're dead. But if you bring a sacrifice to the altar on the Day of Atonement, their sins were forgiven. And because the tabernacle and the priesthood accepted the sacrifice, and the sacrifice was for sin. See, this is the sacrifice of burnt offerings. There were sin offerings, and all the different things that you broke. They had things that you gave, and lambs and fruits of the field, and all this other kind of stuff. And on the Day of Atonement, see, you could rest assured that people weren't going to bring a rock into your tent and crush your skull.
Now I say it like that for this reason. See, dead is dead. And not being killed was a wonderful thing for those people. This was a tabernacle of salvation from a natural, physical, earthly standpoint. It actually functioned to keep people physically from being stoned to death. And you can't get... What other function did this tabernacle serve?
What else did it do? Was it like a,
Kind of a gathering place, like for a tailgate party before a game or something like that? The purpose of this tabernacle was to provide a way of salvation for those who broke a law they couldn't keep.
Yeah. Now, if Romans 1:9, if the physical reveals the invisible, then there's got to be,
It is required to be a spiritual principle of something that broke a law and should have been killed because it deserved it. But because of something provided, it was not. Something that deserved death. Not that was innocent. The thing that was innocent died. The thing that wasn't innocent is you don't do this thing backwards. And all I'm saying is that either Romans 1:19 and 20 works or it doesn't. Now that's the tabernacle pattern. Now watch. Yahweh Elohim, his name is Yahshua. That means that Yahweh is salvation. And in order for Yahweh to be salvation, there's got to be something to say, correct? And I just, I have to usurp this manifestation because I just think it's so wonderful. But if you have a shipwreck, and one guy lives, he's on the news called a survivor. Right? Yeah, right. If you have a shipwreck, and one guy drags 3 people to shore on his back who couldn't swim. I'm talking about people who could swim, who punched them out so that they couldn't swim, so that he looked like he was Well, you gotta think about that. There are people who want to look good, but I'm talking about here, these are like kids, it's the people who can't swim, and he's now a hero, a savior. There's a difference here. And somehow these things have to be manifested in the Spirit. Now, I don't know how you want to do it. That's what the rest of this weekend is for. You figure out how you want to do that. But come hell or high water, those principles have to be manifested in the Spirit. Now, this purpose, pattern, or plan of salvation. See, when Yahweh made out this, let me just say it like this. When Yahweh declared this creation, when he took this name, Yahshua, he first declared his purpose. And his purpose was to be salvation. That was the whole, that was the idea behind the whole thing. It wasn't, I'm bored and I want to do a video game, 3-dimensional with solid stuff. In this video game, we'll have salvation. That's not what his purpose was, to be salvation. Not to have these people earn. His name is salvation, so his purpose was that he would be the salvation. See, that's his purpose. And the pattern was, the purpose of this pattern was salvation. See, the purpose or pattern, because him, and this is Yahshua, isn't it?
Isn't he the lamb? Isn't he the washing? Isn't he the oil? Isn't he the light of the world, and the bread, and the only intercessor, and he and God? It's not only that he transfigured, but the principles of it's him. See? It's not this is him and this and that. It's this, or it's all the same. See, if you say or, then you're talking about one thing. If you say and, you're talking about three things. See what I'm saying? And so he is the purpose, the pattern, or the plan. And the plan that he had was the institution of this law and the fulfillment of this law and the bringing in of Pentecost. And so you have the court round about, the holy place, and the most holy place laid down. That was how. That was the plan. That was how he was going to do it. So, just to set up, a little beginning for you guys. That's all that I really want to do, and I'm done with it. But that's been on my mind, and I just see that it's important to recognize that there's a unity in that, so that someone doesn't trap you down the line someplace. I've been trapped. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Emler, and at this time, I'd like to call on the Dean of the class, Dr. Bob White.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So many times before. Please, I'm so tired. Don't put me up. I have to go to the bathroom. Don't put me up. Very enjoyable, Carl. Gosh. I just was visiting some classes down in the Washington, D.C. area. And I was a little astounded at what I witnessed in class. And maybe it's me, maybe it's my perspective. Can you hear me all right?
No, speak up, please.
Speak up?
Yeah.
Why don't I just take this thing off? Is that okay? Can you hear me now, Chuck?
Yes,
Yeah, I got a big mouth.
yes.
I was a little astounded at some of the things that I witnessed in the Washington area when I visited a couple of classes. And like I said, maybe it's me, maybe it's my perspective. And the thing that got me was the instability of the people in the IDMR. And I saw it in Tennessee, too. And that's the kind of thing that we're supposed to be pulled out of.
Right.
We're pulled out of the world. We're supposed to be rooted and grounded and established in what power is laying down in those witnesses. That's what gives us the confidence, that's what gives us the faith that there is a Creator, He is real. We were derived from Him previously, hopefully, in subjection to the mystery of iniquity, which is Him. I'm talking about Yahweh. Because He is both mysteries. One Spirit, both mysteries. That's what we were taught from the first time we came into class. And we've had just some major atrocities happening here in the United States that we've all been thinking about, and groping with, and working with, and seeing Yahshua's purpose unfold. And I'll just tell you, I'll be very frank and honest with you. I mean, when I came home from work and turned on the TV, because I turned on the radio, I had a jazz tape in, the tape ended, I clapped it out, and I hear this radio announcer talking about, well, we don't know where Air Force One is. And the attack on the Pentagon. I'm driving home from work and I said, now this is some comedy show. But that's the thought that went through my mind, who is this jerk? This isn't funny. And as the conversation, he's obviously having a conversation with another commentator, and they're talking back and forth and so forth. And I thought, what? We're at war, the United States is under attack, and I'm painting a garage? I mean, you're dumbfounded, you know. And I got home and I turned on the TV, and there it was, the second plane's coming in, they're showing it going over and over and over again, and you saw the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers come down in New York City. And as the events unfolded, I'll just tell you, I was glued to the TV, what was going on, and just not even able to digest initially for the first 3 days. I watched. I watched with horror, and I watched not with fear, but with compassion for those people or those souls that had to suffer and undergo. I'm talking about the ones in the air or in those planes, because they knew, obviously, after that first plane hit, what their fate was. And that's all come out. See? And those that were in the Pentagon, and those that were at the World Trade Center. And as I watched the thing unfold, and it was horrific, if you just watched, if you just paid attention, it was a horrific thing. And I was moved with compassion for those people, especially the survivors who came looking for their relatives. Where is my husband in the picture? Where is my brother? Where's my wife? Can you help me? He's missing. She's missing. And I'll be honest with you, I sat there and I wept. Because they are human beings that Yahshua created. They are your fellow countrymen. In New York, they're my fellow New Yorkers. And after I came up out of the emotionalism of it, I began to, we began in Ithaca to start looking, well, boss, you got the whole world watching. What are you trying to show us? Now let's get to work. What do we got to get to work for? We got a migration that's going according to his pattern, which reveals unto us his purpose. And we began to examine things and look at things. And you have to really initially start off in simplicity. And when I saw the chain of events unfold and got through the emotionalism of it, was able to pull myself up by the bootstraps and realize, well, okay, let's get to work. Boss has got something going on here, but we got to look at this thing. We got to look at it in a concrete fashion, so that we can understand the principles that he's trying to show us. And as we began to go to work with it and look at the things, and some emails have come back and forth across the country, and we were looking at what you were looking at here in Michigan, and what they were looking at down there in Florida, and some places in New England, and up in New York, and so forth. It all began to make sense real quick in a hurry. And once you start to get the thing rolling, I mean, it just starts flipping and flipping and flipping. And you just compare notes and you say, oh, yeah. Carl's looking at this, and Terry's looking at that, and Joel's looking at this, and Bobby's looking at that, and Ricky's looking at this, and Freddie's looking at that. I'm wondering what the rest of the institute's doing.
Yeah.
Because when I went to D.C. and visited a couple of classes, I could not believe how that everybody who wasn't normally coming to class on a regular basis was coming to class and was sitting there waiting for the dean to get up. thought that we were taught that every man shall know the least of the great. I thought that we were taught that this old covenant has not been valid or in existence for almost 2,000 years. That we are now in the spiritual covenant. That we're not under the bondage of the law of sin and death. We have been taught to listen to that still small voice within us. Terry has to listen to it within him. Bob has to listen to it within him. And that's what I thought that we were supposed to be ruled by. That was the law that was in us that's governing and taking captive our every thought. That's my understanding of what the new covenant is. That there's been a change in the spirit, which has converted or changed the soul. If I've got a bottle of whiskey, and I dump it down the drain, and I fill it full of vodka, do I still have a bottle of whiskey? Change is taking place. Bottle's still the same. Container is still the same. But the content is different. And it was astounding to me that people are still looking for a physical priest to give them physical commandments or ordinances. Like I said, I saw it in Tennessee. I mean, from the first speaker. The first speaker let the cat out of the bag. He was doing a nice job, and all of a sudden we were charged to be nice to each other. Wait a minute, if you have the proper spirit in you, you don't need something to charge.
Yeah.
You're going to behave yourself. Why? Because there's been a change in you.
Yeah.
All this evidence and all these witnesses that we have been taught is supposed to have an effect on us.
Yeah.
Not a temporary effect, but a permanent effect. I'm sorry if I'm a little emotional, a little loud, but I'm angry.
All right.
Well, I guess I'm not the only one. Someone else is angry too. It astounded me to go visit a class and see that the majority of the people in that class were just watching for everything that was... I'm sorry. It is very sad. And it's scary. It's scary that there is such a minority of people that I am associated with and come in contact with that actually believe that with their whole heart. I love broad cheddar, but I don't have to go driving up to Canada when I have a question.
Yeah.
Not that I won't, or not that it won't do me good to have a question and communicate with them. That's not what I'm saying. The revelation still has to come from within.
Yeah.
So anyway, we began to go to work with some of these things, and one of the biggest things that I think that we've been looking at in New York, and I've talked to others as I've traveled around. I've been in Rhode Island for a while, and now I'm down in D.C. Is what is Yahweh trying to show the world? Because it's obviously just not for us. He has given us the ability or the capability, and I'm not talking about on an individual basis, but I'm saying His Spirit in us, which reveals to us. He has given us by His Spirit, the capability to interpret not just the Scriptures, but the whole creation.
Right.
And what goes on in this creation. Now, what do you think that He would be trying to show the world with the atrocities that just took place in this country? There's no safety in the flesh. What are they calling these people? Terrorists. Evil. Evil what? Evil doers. Satanic. The devil. I mean, that's world news. It's not just here in the United States. This is all over the world. They're looking at these terrorists as the devil or evil. You think Yahweh's trying to wake up the world showing that the mystery of iniquity will kill you? Yes, there is a devil in my purpose. And he will kill you. It was in the scripture lesson. Don't be afraid of him that's able to kill the body alone. Now we took the pattern, and we see through the operation of this pattern, when the priest went in there, he had to bring an innocent sacrifice, as Paul was talking about, to this altar. You had sin offerings and burnt offerings and fruit offerings and free will offerings, but anyway, there was a principle of blood here on this altar. 4 points, right?
Mm-hmm.
The priest had to take that sacrifice and he had to immerse it or wash it or cleanse it in water. So you have the principle of water. The high priest had to be anointed initially in his priesthood with holy anointing oil, which symbolized the Spirit. Right? And then you had 40 steps approximately in this tabernacle in his administration in the holy place. So you had that principle of blood, water, Spirit, Word. And we've seen that down through Scriptures. And we recognize that's initially the basic foundation and simplicity of the gospel. It's death, burial, resurrection, ascension, blood, water, Spirit, 40. That's what we go after new person. That's what we go after babe. Right?
Right.
And we take them over to Romans 1:19 and 20 and we show them how that from a natural standpoint. You're born. It's a bloody discharge. That amniotic fluid or that bag of waters has to break. The child comes down through the birth canal and inhales his first breath of life. Takes on the Spirit. And he's been into utero for 40 weeks. Blood, water, Spirit, 40. That's how you're born from a natural standpoint. And then we take it to this pattern and show how that, too, is going according to Yahweh's pattern. The Savior said in his ministry that not only have you been born from beneath, but you've got to be born from above. Yeah. Spiritually or psychologically. Okay. And oftentimes, the last, 8-10 years, and we even had, in the eastern region, we had a visiting dean from the southern region. I'll never forget it. He got up in 95. He pulled out, as it were, or he took the pointer and he pounded a harp. He said, blood, water, Spirit, 40. Blood, water, Spirit, 40. Blood, water, Spirit, 40. It's a soothing melody, John. It soothes the beast.
Soothes the beast. That's to soothe the beast.
That's to soothe the beast. Blood, water, Spirit, 40. It was mocking. Blood, water, Spirit, 40. I never forgot that. This is someone whom I grew up in the southern region with, and I love very dearly. And I could not believe how that the very last 2 lectures that the founder gave, 26 years ago, in 1975, he warned and admonished, not how are you going to get up off the blood, water, Spirit? Yahweh is Spirit. How are you going to get up off of that? Now see how silly that is? He said, now any idiot can say that's stupid. See? But Yahweh's purpose is nothing but a repetition. And look, we're demonstrating it all the time with this pattern. And the mystery of iniquity, you have the IHI chapter? No? Okay.
Right
there, to the right.
It's there. It's here, name chart, IRI.
Over here?
Doesn't have both mysteries.
He doesn't have the.
Okay. All right. If there's one Yahweh, two mysteries, what is the devil operating by? Same pattern. He can't escape it like we can't escape it for the life of it. I'm going to try and cut down early so that we can speak. I got so much to say that it's not going to take on shape and form. No. So, if the mystery of iniquity is going by the same pattern, and Yahweh's pattern is a repetition, right? We see blood, water, spirit 40 in the tabernacle. We take that pattern and we rely on the migration. Do we see blood, water, spirit 40? When we take that pattern and we rely on the story of Abraham and Isaac, do we see that same blood, water, spirit 40? When we lay it on the end of the post-Diluvian age, antediluvian age, do we see blood, water, spirit 40? So we see that those principles, dictated by that pattern, they just repeat and repeat and repeat, right? And that is in righteousness, down through the ages and dispensations. Now we say that the mystery of righteousness and the mystery of iniquity are doing what? They're running parallel down through the ages and dispensations. Well, guess what? What you saw the devil do back in the garden, he still do. Why? Because it's nothing but a repetition. It's according to Yahweh's purpose.
Yeah.
And we have to catch on to those things. See? So now, we're looking at those 4 jets that were hijacked. Right? And there were 4 separate points of blood. Now we're going by a pattern, right? What's the next thing that we're looking for? Water. If you turned on the news, did they just show people in the United States? No, they were showing London, Paris, Moscow. What did you see people in those cities doing? The whole world was crying. What did those atrocities do to this country? It united it or unified it in what? In a patriotic spirit. There's blood, water, spirit. And I think it was the 3rd day, if I'm not mistaken, but I stand to be corrected, President Bush was going to ask Congress for $20 billion. Before I said what he was going to ask for. And before he could get it out, what did they offer? 40. Why? Because we're going by a pattern. He wanted to ask him for 20, but what did Congress do? No, here's 40. Why? They don't know why. We do. That's just how simple it is. So when the smoke clears and begins to lift, and you begin to look at Yahweh's, Now Sunday, October 7th, I went down and I visited Brooklyn. We went to class. I'll tell you, Gloria Allen was on the floor and she was kicking the devil behind. Class down there was from 12:30 to 2:30. So I'm out of class, I hop in the car with the dean. We run over to United Nations
UN Plaza Hotel.
UN Plaza Hotel, thank you, Joel. Because Joel and Judy had flown up. Joel had a conference to attend. Wanted to go over and see Joel, and we wanted to go down to Ground Zero. And his wife's a school teacher, and take some pictures so she could take them back to her class. And come out of class, turn the radio on, and what are they saying? We're bombing Afghanistan. Bin Laden's on the run. Boy, Gloria, you're in there preaching the gospel, and the boss is manifesting up out here on the wall. So what's that showing for it? Is a principle of what? Go by the pattern. If they're bombing Afghanistan, people are what? So it's a principle of death or blood. Were they sending jets in at that time on Sunday, October 7th? Think about it. No, they weren't. Where are all those Tomahawk missiles coming from? Submarines. The assault was coming from the water. When people began to see on the television and hear on the radio, down in New York City anyway, I don't know about the rest of the country, but I'm sure it was manifested. What were they doing? They were resurrected in their spirit from retaliation. And the announcer, if he said it once, he said it 50 times. Some 10 countries are on our side.
40 countries.
Kept saying, 40 countries are with us. 40. 40. 40. Why? Look, a child can see that. It's so simple. So once the smoke clears and you dry your eyes and you begin to take the purpose of Yahweh in simplicity, and that's all I want to demonstrate. You can see His purpose unfold. Now there's so much in this, and I'm sure you've been working with it even more than we have. But I'll tell you, when you begin to see things like that unfold, what should it do to your soul? Shake you up? No. See, terrorism, or terror, or a terrorist imposes intense or extreme fear by violence or intimidation. If you don't do such and such and so, you're showing forth disobedience, you're going to the lake. I'm sorry, I'm not intimidated.